The up to 9% increase in power prices will put more financial pressure on households in New South Wales. Crystal Wu has been speaking to residents in Wallara in Sydney's eastern suburbs. Crystal, how are they responding to this?
Tom, it's more financial pressure to already strained households. A 9% price hike for all residents in New South Wales from July 1. It means that for someone who pays an average of $500 per quarter, this would be an extra $200 a year on energy bills. This is a necessity rather than a desire. Now, residents here say they could be spending their money on something else, on childcare, on groceries, on more essential items. This is just another bill to think about, and they're not happy about it.
I think it's more difficult for everyone. Everything is more expensive. I've got 2 kids and the second one will start daycare, which is already quite expensive. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's another thing that we need to think about to prioritise in the month.
It's not good, of course. Things keep going up and, yeah, the government, I guess, should be doing what they can to reduce the costs for everyone who's doing it tough.
The Albanese government, though, hasn't ruled out addressing this in the short term by offering residents potentially a one-off payment like they did last year, up to $300 in electricity relief credits. Now, I asked people what they thought about that, and they think it's just putting a Band-Aid on top of a bigger issue.
This is a government that fails to solve the underlying problem and then day in, day out, puts a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Residents weren't convinced when I asked them whether this would make them more likely to vote Labor if they are offered this one-off payment.
No.
Just because it's a one-off payment?
Yeah, I think, you know, my values kind of don't change just because of that.
So, Tom, the Coalition are vowing to fix the cost of living crisis in the long term, not promising any one-off payments, but promising a reduction in energy prices. But the people across Sydney are all feeling very anxious here ahead of the election. The cost of living is one of the key topics of discussion, and an extra $200 on electricity doesn't sound good to any of us, Tom.
Crystal Wu, thank you. Joining me for more on this is Tony Wood, Director of the Energy and Climate Program at the Grattan Institute. Thanks for your time. I guess just taking the macro on this, we know Labor's not going to get to this $275 cut in electricity bills. We know they went up steeply and they were actually going to before Labor came into power, the delay from the coalition, if you like, of releasing that information. But they've gone up a lot since. Why? What's the short version of why they're going up?
Most of it has been increases in the wholesale price of electricity and some of it in the network prices. The headline number that you were just talking about in that introduction in New South Wales is about 8 or 9%. In Queensland and South Australia, it's more like 5%, and in Victoria, it's effectively 0. So it varies quite a lot across the country, and that reflects the fact that the way our energy system is working today, with the various mixtures of generation technologies, is varying quite a lot. And in New South Wales in particular, we've had a lot of problems with coal-fired power stations which have become less reliable, and depending on gas when that happens, is very expensive. So a lot of this is stuff that in the short term governments can't do much about, but there are things they could do which could improve things a little bit down the track.
Would the dramatic intervention that makes the biggest difference be on gas? Because on the one hand, we have these really high prices and gas as a peaking source is often blamed for it. On the other hand, we export so much of it and don't make all that much. If you compare us to Qatar, for example, is that the most illogical part of our energy puzzle, if you like?
Well, I think one of the challenges we have is on the southeast, Victoria in particular, we're running out of gas, regardless of what's happening in sending gas to other countries, because we don't have a physical system to get gas even from Queensland of the volume we need to offset that reduction in gas. And gas prices are going to be higher regardless of what we do. I mean, governments can't, throwing money to try and subsidise gas prices is no more sensible than throwing money at trying to just bribe people to vote for your own particular political party. On the other hand, gas is a fundamentally important issue, and I think we don't have a clear gas strategy of how we go forward here. And it is going to be important because gas even if we change the way we use gas in our homes and businesses and use more electricity, which for most of us would be cheaper, gas will have a role to play, particularly backing up wind and solar. And so I think we've got to be, whoever's in government after May has to have a much better and clearer approach as to what we're going to do about gas, particularly on the east coast of Australia, Tom.
So looking on that very measure, if people are out there right now saying, okay, which party's better, is it just a case we need to know what the coalition's doing? They've announced nuclear, they've hinted at more gas, but how will that happen and what will they do on overall, strategies in that short term as well as the medium and long term?
Look, I think it is a tricky one because, the nuclear idea, which is not really yet a policy in my view, is not going to have any impact on cost of living today. And there's lots of arguments if it ever will. In the short term, whoever's in government after May is going to have very much the same problems on their plate that we're talking about now. We've got to do something about making sure that we can work past coal, because replacing ageing, more expensive coal-fired power stations, which are breaking down more often and leading to part of this need to use more gas, is going to be part of the solution, right? And you can't just replace old coal with new coal, because new coal-fired power stations would cost even more. So one of the problems here is we haven't been making enough progress over the last, not just 3 years, over the last 10 or 15 years on this challenge. And now it's all coming together in a way that's much harder to deal with. And it does vary dramatically across the states. And I don't think it's going to be fixed anytime soon, but I also don't think we're going to see dramatic price increases. But, 8-9% is very painful for people of the sort that your interview was talking about earlier. The good news on that side is maybe it's not as bad everywhere else.
Yeah, indeed. It's and interestingly enough, Victoria's been sort of better off in this 3 years compared to others, at least, albeit bills going up quite a bit. Tony Wood, thank you. Well, this energy debate, cost of living debate is going to be a huge one in the election.